Our next speaker was somebody that told us, I don't want to see the same people next year. Yeah? So we need some fresh ideas. So first of all, thanks for this openness. That's exactly what we want to do. So Ole, he's a lecturer for usability in Copenhagen, University of Copenhagen. He attended Conversion Summit last year, and he said, I have some great stuff to show you. And I thought it's interesting because it's all about how can we analyze pages and have like kind of a measurement system to see what works and what works not. So Chris, you told us about persuasion. We will have more persuasion in the program later on. So it's all about persuasion techniques and how do people behave. And so the next talk is all about, can we have a system to evaluate this stuff, or is it still gut feeling? That was one of the questions here. How do we really are able to evaluate it? So that is an interesting approach from Ole that came here from Copenhagen to show us his idea. So give a warm welcome to Ole Gregersen. Thank you.
Yeah. So you love me already, I can tell. No, so subconsciously your brain is telling you that this is going to be a great presentation because you have all the persuasive elements here. Well, I will ask you to use your conscious brain to make your own decisions later. Alright? Try to do that. Now, so I call this the Motivational Index, and I'm going to show you what it is in a minute. But basically I teach usability in Copenhagen, and so the students there, of course, if I can work this, the students there, of course, ask, well, there's definitely more to a website than just usability. We all know that. Hence the term user experience. We want to add more. So we start looking at, okay, what are the layers of websites, and start looking into how can we work with not only how we can get users to actually perform the things that they need to perform, but also persuade them and influence them. And so that's basically the context of this talk, which is, of course, interesting in a conversion context about how can we influence our users. So these are the things that we've been working with. So we asked ourselves, so what are websites doing today? So we looked at a lot of Danish websites, and we asked ourselves, which are the most persuasive websites? Which websites can actually do this emotional, persuasional stuff? And so what elements are they using? So what's the sort of status quo? I won't say best practice. Thank you, Chris, you ruined that. But no, I won't say best practice anymore because it obviously needs to be tested. But let's just have a look at what websites are doing and then compare them. So not only can we learn from comparing websites, but we can also use it in a sort of competitive analysis. So what's common? What's more specific? So that's basically the questions we were asking ourselves. So in order to create this index, which I will show you in a minute, I took six websites for this presentation. We obviously did this the Danish websites. So again, I asked the question in different forums, like communities, which are the most persuasive websites? And that was not easy to get an answer. So I just took the top, and these websites from the top retail US websites. So from a list of 50 top-selling US websites, I picked these 6. So they will be on one axis in my index, and on the other axis, I could have taken the lift model actually from White Funnel, but I decided to take these 6 weapons of influence from Robert Cialdini, which I assume a lot of you have read. That seems to be somewhat of a hype, but I think they work really well as a basic understanding or some headlines. So we don't have to think about specifically what Cialdini is writing about liking, but we can think about what can be put into that box and use that as a framework. So basically, the idea is this, very simple. Just plot the websites into this graph and look at what we can learn from comparing websites. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do this for you. You can do this at home with German websites. But then at the same time we can learn something about what's actually going on with these persuasive design elements. So, I'm going to walk you through them. I don't know if you know them from Robert Cialdini. I would definitely ask you to read the book Influence, and he's coming out with a new book soon, but he's written like 3 or 4 books on this topic, and I'm sure he's very happy about the converting community. I'm sure he's selling more books now than he has done before. But, so social proof is basically about that we want to belong. We want to belong in social groups, like this is one social group, we want to belong here. And we don't like to be rejected. So basically, we like to also choose things that other humans have chosen. That's why we have like different ways of trying to understand what our friends do, and then if the friends like the movie, we like the movie too. And there's a lot of social proof going on the web. So these are so I'm going to show some examples here, and basically you can pick any example here. They're all showing ratings with stars and reviews. Okay, so we've all seen that, and the ones of you that are doing business to consumer goods, I'm sure you already have ratings and reviews on your website. So this is traditional thing. Now, one thing that is slightly more advanced in this field is that you can have sort of like aggregate data where you put the ratings on the list and say, okay, so many are 5 stars, so many are 1 star. You've all seen that too, so that's just like another level. But basically, what's happening with social proof, which is interesting, is that adding more and more layers on top of the product, but also on top of the actual individual review. So this is the individual review. It has stars and it has some words. And over here you have maybe some more sort of quantitative measures, so the user can say, okay, this is what I think about this product. Basically, it's just even more stars, isn't it, really? So the other interesting part here is that you have some credibility here. So this is not just Susie76542, but also you can see where she's from and what type of person she is. So you can actually relate a bit more to her. But actually just adding more data to the review. And then here, another part, which just adds even more, is other people saying whether they like this review or not. So you have social proof on social proof, basically. And it doesn't stop there. You can keep going. You can do this, you can do that, you can do this. So lots of ways of just adding more and more social proof. It just becomes stronger and stronger. Now another classic example of social proof that we see are these lists. So they come in different shapes. The traditional one is like the top 10 hit list of music. So why do we want to know what's the top 10 pop songs? Well, because we want to like them too, or we want to buy them too, basically. So you've done the same stuff for years online to say, okay, these are the top selling products. And of course it works. It's like we want to know what sells the most, because it's probably the best or the most popular. That's basically what our subconscious brain is telling us. Everybody else likes it, it must be good. And so we've also seen like if you buy this, well, I took it from the German Amazon site, I think my friends in Germany, that sort of thing. But it's basically the same thing, that if you buy something, and then Amazon will tell you what other clients have bought the same for. So that's old knowledge. So these are basically what you see within social proof. And we'll see more and more of this. So if you go to a certain category, you'll be told that other people that are into that category also look at this. And so you can constantly bombard with what other users are doing on the website to show you that other humans are actually making decisions that you can depend on. So here it is plugged into the motivational index, and so someone was clever enough to ask me what's the difference between the small star and the big star. Well, the small star just means that the company is actually using social proof, but only on a very basic level. And the big cross means that they're using on several levels, they're using on different ways. And so this is very highly unscientific, it's just my opinion. But basically I use it relatively to say which websites can improve the use of social proof and which websites are already doing a great job there. And I'm going to take you through the other weapons of influence and give you a few examples. Now this is very interesting, and I think I'm very happy that Avinash talked about this morning. Because this is one of my definite favorites, the whole commitment and consistency part. See, basically, this is about us as humans, we want to be consistent. So if we make a deal with someone, and you return to us and ask us to continue that deal, we are inclined to do that. Because we want to be consistent. We don't want to change our opinion all the time. We want to be trustworthy. And what this is us making a connection to the company. So everything from the basic Facebook likes, where we endorse something. We may not think that it's anything special, but we are actually endorsing a product or company or a friend or a story or something physically by pressing on a little button. We're making a little connection saying, okay, we have a little handshake there. So lots of companies do way more than that. We see shopping lists especially, we see save things for later, we see lots of things where you can make that little connection with companies and actually they can, I mean, this is great data, you can collect this data and use it for many things. These are real interactions, they're not just people looking at your website, they're actually connecting. And so once you've done that, you are more inclined, at least theoretically from a psychological point of view, you're more inclined to return to these websites and continue your handshake with them. So reciprocity is a slightly tricky thing, but basically it means that if I give you a gift, you feel inclined to give me a gift back. You may not know it, but it is hardwired into your brain from what we call it the reptile brain. The brain that was developed over 700, million years. So these are some things that are very deep in us, which we use when we are in social groups. It's a good idea to exchange gifts. Yeah. So this, to me, is basically an exchange of gifts. Now, basically, we are giving the company here something, and they give us something in return. So we're making little deals with them. So if you buy something you're already going to buy, maybe you buy a little bit more, we'll give you value, we'll give you something back. Email is not the best example, because I don't think when I sign up for an email, that when I then finally get the email, it's like a gift. Maybe it's quite the opposite. But a lot of this stuff here is just like, we make a little deal that we can trade some goods. So this is something that we also know from marketing, but also something that we'll see more. And none of these websites that I've looked at here are actually giving a gift to start off with. You have to give them something first. It could just be your opinion on a tiny click, just any little thing. And then you can start having that little exchange of gifts. And then when it comes to the principle of scarcity, which means like things are running out, this is fantastic. We all know this from marketing as well. All of you that are marketers have tried having campaigns that are running out. So I've been selling like holidays online for a couple of years and working with conversion there. And you can say, hey, trips to Disneyland Paris. And you go like 4 days, 3 days, 2 days, 1 day. And every time the sales just goes like that, has a peak. We humans, we just love that stuff. We just fall for it. It really works. And that's why all supermarkets, they celebrate their birthdays every year. It's just because that special day, that special offer, that you only get that special day. So this lies deep within us. So what's happening on the web is like, a classic example would be, okay, so there's only 2 left. If you go to booking.com, I mean, I showed the example as well. I didn't want to show it because it's almost too much. It was just like they bombard you on the hotel pages with like, okay, there's only so many rooms left, and there's like 2 other people buying them now, so you have to buy them. But so here's typical stuff like it's running out of stock, you better buy it now, like the campaign will end, or you can only buy it here, or limited time only. So that definitely also works, and we'll see more and more of that. I'm curious whether it can backfire, because if you only have 2 left, well, people go somewhere else, but they have more left and stuff. But I think in the actual situation, when you want the boom, and you've been sitting there clicking on it, I think you might react positively to the only 2 left. And then there's this area of trust. So I'm not going to make so many conclusions, because we've just seen test results from Chris here showing that it's not a good idea. So I don't want to do the big sucker and say that works, because I haven't tested any of this. I'm just looking at it, and then you can draw your own conclusions. You can make your own tests. But anyways, I think when it comes to authority, see, the original experiments were about people in like lab coats and police officers and that sort of thing, where they could make people do some really uncool things just by looking like authorities and telling them you have to do this, you have to put pain in this person, and people would actually be inclined to do it. But I'm thinking authority more as connected with the whole trust credibility area, which is huge, I would say, within conversion rate optimization. But one thing that I find interesting on these websites is the American websites don't do it as much as the Danish websites, and I have some reasons for that later. But one thing is that you can lend the brand, you can borrow from the brands. So like maybe Amazon, they don't need to have brands all over the place, because they themselves are an authority, they are one big brand. But if you have like my own bookshop.com, then you might have all the publishers' logos in the site, because it rubs off a little bit, like it's rubbing off, like, okay, that's all these really well-known companies, and so you can use logo to rub off a little bit of brand on you. You also see this, and you can say, okay, but these are just the brands that we have. Yeah, if you add all the logos, and some websites have like super massive logo soup, and it just rubs off and shows you that we are working with these respected companies. And of course, you can have these trust signs. We have some other ones in Denmark that look different. I'm sure in Germany maybe you have some other organization that does some sort of like trustworthy sort of thing. And there's always real long ongoing discussions of whether it works or not. We have those on blogs in Denmark too. Does it work or doesn't it work? And of course you have to test it because you can't really tell. But this is something that's definitely on the Danish market growing, more and more trust indicators, authorities saying like, you can trust this website because we are here. And then the last one is liking. Now that's just me really violating this principle. But what I want to talk about when I talk about liking, the basic principle goes that if you like me, I can persuade you to do things that you wouldn't otherwise do. So we have seen lots of research from like presidential campaigns and this sort of thing, especially in the States, where people like the candidates more if they are good looking, or if they are likable, if they think they are likable as people. And I think people is a really interesting thing on these websites, because of course there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of tests and a lot of discussions about how images work and that stock footage and all that. That's not so much my point here. My point is that some websites don't have any humans on them. No humans. Only products. And then some websites have humans that represent the company. So you would have like this guy from the Office Depot explaining about some goods. No, he works there, we can sort of tell. And but he still looks more like a normal person. So he represents like humans, real humans on the inside. And then you see more and more companies having real humans, real users that are not sort of like part of the company, but they have just like sort of added themselves to the company, or they're sort of endorsing the company through sending them stuff. And I think this is really interesting. And so some websites do a lot of really good conversion work. The prime example on the conversion conferences have always been Gun Dog Supply. So if some of you are interested in this, you can check out Gun Dog Supply. But there's one person, he's called, I think Steve, he's like related to all the products. He's tried them all out, and you can see his dog and everything. So he's like storytelling. So some websites do that a lot, and some websites really don't do it. I think it's interesting also with the whole social group to try and have that humane look on the website and work with the whole liking. How can we connect to real humans and make that work for your website? I think that's a really interesting area. So, deep breath. Those were the examples of the different areas, and I have some observations that I'll share with you. It won't be all of my observations, but it'll be a few, and then we can see if there's questions for this. But one thing that I find really interesting, and it's not surprisingly Amazon that does this, is I think one thing we see more of when it comes to these persuasive elements is that you can combine them. You can add more layers to them. Now, last night when we met up with all the speakers, and I was asked what is your presentation about, I came up with the word Facebookification. And this to me is Facebookification. The fact that this woman, she's decided not only to buy the shoe and to give it a rating and to maybe give it a review, she's also submitted a picture of herself with the shoes on. So this is user content. This is the woman. She took the picture, she went to her camera, she blocked it, and she uploaded the picture this and that of the shoes on her. I find that quite impressive. But basically it's the same as writing. She might go just write, I really love the shoes, they look beautiful on my feet, and by the way I'm wearing a colorful dress. So what's going on here? Not only I mean, come on, shoes. I mean, shoes are hardly any very big part of this thing. Look at all the stuff that's going on top of the product, like layer after layer of meta information and layers of persuasive elements. So we have the standard persuasive stuff here with the stuff and this and that. We have the stuff about this person, so we saw that before. But now we have all the liking stuff. I mean, we can check out her floor, we can check out her curve, we can relate to this person. Is she rich? Does she live in a nice place? Is she good looking? I don't know. Does she wear fancy clothes? There's a rapport with this here, which I found really, really interesting. And also, this woman, she's really made a connection to Amazon. I mean, Facebook, to some degree, I can understand, we want to, endorse ourselves and our daily lives on Facebook, and so we want to be seen and heard and be someone. But at Amazon's website, I find that really interesting. I think if they can make that grow, it's a really interesting area where you can get clients to make a connection with the company, with the product. And of course, you can continue here if you think, hey, that's cool, you can go on and do that yourself. So, more layers added, more layers of social proof and other principles on top of each other at play at the same time. That could be one observation. A completely different observation would be, this is a best buy, form. And of course you might be interested in testing whether you want to have other elements than the actual form. But I think something that's interesting is looking at how do you use persuasive elements along the whole journey from the part of the journey where they end on the website and they go all the way to the checkout process. Because that's something that's really interesting from a conversion perspective view, isn't it? Something we all look at, funnels and all that stuff, and where do they drop off? It's like the basic thing, the first thing we do when we start doing conversion optimization. So I would ask, in this sort of screenshot, why they're not using more persuasive elements? Is it because it will be a distraction, which is what I heard from Chris, could be like a test result, it would be just distracting if we have the very shiny logo here. But it's interesting that we sort of give up a little bit on halfway and not follow through with the persuasive elements, because I think this is a place where people drop off. And so we can read a lot about, okay, how to make better forms and this and that, but maybe that's not what it's about. Maybe they need to be confirmed that with all these persuasive elements. So we could ask ourselves, can we add social proof here? Can we add reciprocity? Well, we can. We can save this for later. So they don't have that here. You can't come back here and finish the form. So that will also be something that I will look into, try and say, okay, can we use persuasive elements all along on the website? So there it is. Highly unscientific, I might add. But I still think there's some interesting things you can ask from this index here, with these websites. So for instance, you can go like, okay, so what's the difference between the way that these websites approach this thing here? And if I'm at Walmart, I feel like asking myself, well, is there any reason why we don't work with reciprocity and liking? Is that a conscious decision, or is it just because we don't want to use that? Because we know, if we read the theory, this stuff really works. I mean, I'm not joking. All these, we know that they are proven, they all work. So how can we is there a potential there that we're not using? So in that sense, you can talk about in some sort of maturity context, saying like, okay, we're here, so which way can we move? And of course, if it was like a real index, I could give them numbers and say, so we have 3, but can we be 5? I don't know. So if I look at them, I just ask myself, like, I can say, okay, so social proof is driven by, it's very popular. Okay, so they all do a lot of social proof. And I think that's because we have Facebook and Google and Amazon. They were the key drivers. I mean, Facebook, they just give you the stuff, you just implement it. It's so easy to implement. So it's a definite driver. Google Plus the same, a massive driver. Amazon, the example that everybody looks to, of course, they're major drivers. So it makes sense that social proof is really out there. When it comes to authority, we can say that the brands they use authority differently. So the big brands, like I said, they don't need authority because they are authority. So Dell, they don't have to have other computer companies on their website, or they have a little bit of like Microsoft stuff on there. And I think it's basically just to please Microsoft, or it's some strategic thing they have going. But smaller sized websites really have to look into how can we create a sense of authority, how can we create that trust. And you can see that if we had websites here that were not so big as these websites, we would see that they would be more inclined to do more authority. Commitment and consistency, those strategies are really growing. There's not so much here, but I think it's something that we'll see a lot more of. Like I said, different wish lists and save this and favorites and all sorts of ways of getting those little interactions. And basically liking is something that is not used so much, but I think it's still interesting to look at how can we use that, area. So, I'm just going to spend what looks to me like a couple more minutes on 3 slides. Yeah, you're on your way already. So one thing I want to say about, that I had some slides about maturity. So I basically think this is a maturity discussion, whether we fulfill the potential that is given to us as web marketers. You can say that these elements of persuasion gives you more layers to communicate to your clients. So basically, instead of just thinking in like different channels, you can say, well, on the web channel, we actually now have more channels that we can use, say, the social proof channel or the authority channel, and we can have more customers. And then you can, in a sense of maturity, you can think of websites that don't do this at all. And you can think of websites that do like a lot, like this is booking.com. I mean, look at that. I call it quantification of the travel industry. Because this is, to me, is like persuasive porn. It's all over the place, and it's blinking, and it's just crazy. And it's like, it has pop-ups, and says like, well, this hotel was just booked 5 minutes ago, and there's 12 more waiting, and like, you've got to book it now, or you will not get it. So they are a good example of someone that are really, really trying to do this, but also maybe it is the way to differentiate themselves. And if you look internally into the organization, you can, well, I didn't bring the optimization side, but maybe next year, I'm ready. So this, I think, is something you have to think into your optimization process, how you can use this data. And that's why I think it's interesting what Avinash said this morning, because I think the most important thing here is to look at these micro conversions, where you have used actually clicking on things that's on sort of that path to conversion. And that data is just like so yummy because you can use it for your segmentation. So these days you might do, okay, he looked at these websites or these products, so we can segment him like this. But in the future we can do persuasional segmentation or persuasional personalization. You feed that data straight back into your website. So this is my last slide, and I said yours and my conclusions because I'm just copy pasting elements from out there and trying to see what I can learn from that. I think there's a lot to be learned just from doing that sort of competitive analysis. I see a glimpse of creativity. A few companies, they are sort of like reinventing things here or being innovative, and most others just follow through. Same thing we see in Denmark. We have something called Trustpilot, which is like basically a framework for like giving reviews. And as soon as like the first 2-3 companies caught on, everybody needs to have it. And the same, I think a lot of people just follow through with what other companies do. I think it's great to use it all the way, and I think about your segmentation. Yes, I hope you enjoyed the show. That was what I presented today, so thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
And there's one thing I forgot. I'd like to say thanks for having me, Andre. That's a great pleasure.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to have you here. So, thank you very much. What I understood is it a kind of persuasion benchmarking that I should do with my competitors and learn, see where there is a niche, maybe a technique that I didn't see?
Well, I think you can use it in different ways, like you can use the way I showed here. I also think you can use it in the way that Chris showed before. You can go like, hey, if I want to start building some ideas of like what to do, where to move, how can I be inspired? What do I look towards?
There could be the hypothesis that things that are on Amazon or Best Buy, I mean, both two retailers that should test everything. So there shouldn't be anything that doesn't work for them. But on the other hand, Chris, you said that there's no best practice. What works for them shouldn't work for me. Is there a solution between the best practice conflict and benchmarking, competitive analysis idea? I mean,
so the reason why we discussed this at the usability course is basically because we were talking about the difference between data-driven decisions and sort of creative decisions. And in the optimization cycle, we would say that most decisions should be data-driven, which is not so simple. And even when you do, like say, split testing or you look at Google Analytics, at some point there will be some creative decisions. You have to sort of like, what is it? You have to say what does this actually mean, and the data won't tell you that. But the question here was the creative decision. So how can we build more elements? So basically here we just look for inspiration, and then that would just be fed into our process, and the process just says you have to test it and see if it works. So and it's not the truth. It's just inspiration.
Okay, it's inspiration. And what I realize is that it's kind of system or methodology. So we again have less gut feeling when it comes to persuasive techniques. I don't read the Cialdini book and try to think what's in it for me like this way, but I can analyze other websites and see they did it this way, they did it this way. So that's a systematical approach.
I mean, I just chose Cialdini as a framework, but there's a lot of other people like BJ Fogg, we talk about him, and Susan Weinstein. A lot of people add in the persuasive elements. So there's lots of inspiration, I think.
So are there any questions? Fragen aus dem Publikum? No?
Yes, I think there's a no.
Yes, I know.
There's a hand at the end.
At the end.
Hi, Ole.
Hi.
That's all. My name is Daniel. The question that came to my mind is, would you recommend everyone to score as high as possible on this motivation of this persuasive index, or are there scenarios where a lesser score will bring more result?
Yeah, so that's a good question. How far am I on actually benchmarking or on actually creating the real index where you can give it a score and say whether it's good or bad? Sadly enough, I don't think it's that simple. I think persuasion is just one tool that you can use. So I think you can make like a score that says how much you use the persuasional elements and maybe to what degree. But whether that proves that your website sells a lot or not, I don't think there's no connection there. And also you can see from my presentation, I haven't used any sort of, I mean, the lift model we saw before also talks more sort of like a marketing lingo, like value proposition. These are purely emotional, psychological aspects of the design that we can use. So I would be careful to use it as a overall benchmark, but I think it's interesting that to just show you how far are you on some sort of ladder towards using all the different elements. I'm sure you can get something out of all of them. You just have to adjust the individual principle to your own website. But it's like all maturity models, they're really good for discussion. They're really good for like, we're here, and we want to go that way. What does that mean for us? So that's basically what I think you should do with this. Say, okay, they do something we don't. Let's talk about it. Let's try it out. Let's see if there's potential in that area that we have not.
So it's for making a first analysis, seeing is there anything that I missed maybe what my competitors already do. So
yeah, because I think this belongs to the step in the process where you build hypothesis and you come up with design possibilities.
Okay. Gibt's noch eine Frage? Nein. Okay. No more questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.